That was so much fun. Okay, now I gotta throw some numbers at you. How about the number 4? 4 seconds. 0 to 60 in 4 freaking seconds. Here's another number, 455. 455 horsepower, 455 pound-feet of torque. Okay, not Camaro ZL1 or Hellcat numbers, but still plenty of power on tap. The Chevrolet Camaro 2SS right behind me has a refreshed design for 2020. You'll notice that Chevy put the bow tie logo back up here where it belongs after some negative reaction to the 2019 front end. The overall shape still looks reminiscent of the 5th gen Camaro introduced over 10 years ago, which itself was influenced by the now 40-year-old 1st gen Camaro, but somehow it still manages to look fresh. Okay, so speaking of the looks, yeah, this particular 2020 Camaro 2SS right here is ridiculous. At least how this one is spec'd out. This optional ZL1 1LE spec wing is, what's a nice way to put it? Outrageous. The bright silver painted wheels are loud. The painted hood stripes are bold. I guess that's a nice way to put it. The optional ground effects are audacious. And to top it off, this thing is lowered. This thing is the exact opposite of a sleeper. Subtle and inconspicuous are 2 words that have never been uttered in the same sentence as Camaro. If you're going to buy a car as aggressive and brutally fun as the Camaro 2SS, might as well shamelessly look the part. I would probably spec mine out to be a bit more subtle, but this Camaro has the kind of cocky swagger that says, I don't give a sh**. So let's look under the hood and see what gives it the permission to have that kind of attitude. So there it is. This 6.2 liter direct injected, naturally aspirated V8 with variable valve timing is a thing of beauty. Even the air intake is just pure art. I love how this looks. We've also got the optional strut tower brace and the optional painted engine cover. I'm not sure that's worth the money, but there you go. It's in there. This particular Camaro has the 10-speed automatic transmission with paddle shifters, which we'll talk about in a bit when we drive this thing. Behind these 20-inch bright silver painted aluminum wheels is the optional 6-piston Brembo brakes up front and the standard 4-piston in the rear. Okay, enough yapping. Let's hop in and drive this thing. All right, here we go. Oh boy. That never gets old. That never gets old. Okay, let's get some of the basics out of the way. Let's talk about this interior. Let's start with the seats. The seats are actually quite comfortable. They offer a really good level of support. The optional adrenaline red inserts are maybe a little bit over the top for my taste, but in general, it looks pretty good. A lot of people like to talk about how cramped this cabin is, but I'm 6'3". I was able to get my seat all the way back and pretty much all the way down to the floor, and I fit just fine. If you're a little bit taller than me, you might feel a little bit claustrophobic, but I was able to easily find a really comfortable driving position. Now, the other thing that everybody loves to mention about the Camaro is how hard it is to see out of. Compared to most vehicles, yes, the Camaro does have a very high belt line and a very, very narrow field of vision out the front window. But once you drive the car for a few minutes, it's really not that big of a deal. The visibility is perfectly acceptable. I think the biggest problem you might have is when you're trying to back out of a parking spot. It's a little bit hard to back up. It does have some good cameras. It's got the rear view mirror camera. It's got a good backup camera. And it's got proximity sensors that lets you know when you're about to hit something, which is nice. In terms of the overall design in here, I actually like it a lot. Yes, if you inspect some areas closely, you'll see some hard, scratchy plastics. I will say that some of the ergonomics in this car are a bit weird. We can start with this center console, which you open it like this, and then once it's open, you actually can't get your hand around to actually get into it. It's just a very, very strange design. I really don't like it. And then once you're in there, To actually plug your phone into the USB jack is impossible. You can't do it while you're driving. You really have to pull over to try to find that jack. So do it before you start driving. There's a couple other weird things. They're not exactly annoyances, they're just a bit odd, like how this infotainment screen kind of like faces down a little bit. I'm guessing that's so that the sun won't reflect on it, but it just looks a bit weird. It takes some getting used to. This 8-inch screen contains GM's latest infotainment system, which is way better than their previous systems. The graphics look so much better. It works great. It's got Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. The Bose audio system in this car sounds really good. I tested it with a wide variety of music, including, of course, the Dead Milkmen. I'm a big fan of these gauges. I like this display in the center there. It's really crisp, looks good. It's got blind spot protection and a decent amount of safety software on board. One big fail though, no adaptive cruise control. It's kind of unforgivable for a $42,000 car, and as tested, a $63,000 car. A couple other small things. The trunk is pretty much useless. The back seat, as you might have guessed, is for your kids only, but the seats do fold down, offering a bit more usability. Now let's talk about the driving modes. In Tour mode, which is the default mode, you would experience what I might call a civilized ride for a Camaro. This mode favors fuel economy, favors comfort. It's quite compliant, quiet even. Around town, aside from a somewhat harsh ride over expansion joints and big bumps, feels like an ordinary car. If you're okay with the fuel mileage that you're likely to get, this would be a perfectly suitable daily driver or commuter car. But if I own this vehicle, I'd have a hard time leaving it in Tour mode, like very much at all. It's a Camaro, you kind of want to drive it aggressively, like at all times. So let's put it into Sport mode. So Sport mode adjusts the shift points, it holds gears a little bit longer, the steering tightens up, it's a little bit more precise. If this car had magnetic ride control, that would adjust the suspension as well, but this car does not have that. This car has the active exhaust feature, so when you put it in Sport mode, it also changes the sound of the exhaust. The exhaust valves open up earlier and more often, and it sounds awesome. And then if you put it into track mode, it's ready to fight. It's ready to rumble. That just came out. I know it sounded really stupid, but I'm probably gonna leave it in the video. Yes, this Camaro is ready to rumble. There, I said it again. It didn't sound any better the second time. So when you're in track mode, you'll notice that the steering tightens up even more. The exhaust gets even more aggressive. It sounds awesome. Okay, one more launch from a stop. Driving extremely fast in a straight line is fun, but pushing a car on a canyon road is even more fun. So when you start to push it, the first thing that you'll notice is that this car does not feel as big and large and as heavy as it actually is. It actually feels kind of light on its feet. Of course, if you were to compare this car to like a Boxster or a Cayman, yes, it's going to feel heavier and larger than those vehicles. But it's surprisingly easy to hustle around. The steering is just so precise. While you do occasionally feel like you could get the rear end to come around on you, the car actually feels quite planted most of the time. For canyon driving, if you want to improve on an already decent setup, you could opt for the 1LE track package. You can't actually get that with the automatic. You actually have to opt for the manual transmission for that package. But for canyon roads and on-track use, that's probably the way to go. But I gotta say, this 2SS with the optional 6-piston brakes in the front, 4 pistons in the rear, sway bar, strut tower brace, lowered suspension, it's pretty good. I'm not gonna say pretty good, it's really good. Sure, there's cars that can get through these corners quicker, but this Camaro SS has more than enough power to make pretty much any road fun. Oh geez, that never gets old. How many times I'm gonna say that in this video? That never gets old. I'm gonna flip it around here. We're gonna talk about the elephant in the room. What is that, you say? The automatic transmission. It's really good. Like really good. I love it. I expected to hate this transmission, but it's one of the best automatics around. The shifts are lightning quick, and there's no doubt that you could hustle this around a track faster with the automatic than you could with the manual. I hate to say it because I love manuals. Most of my vehicles are manuals. Most of the cars I've ever owned are manuals. But if I were to buy this Camaro, I might just get the automatic. I know it's blasphemous. Can't even believe those words left my mouth. But this automatic is that good. There's not many people buying manual transmission cars anymore. For the purists, that's the way to go. Offers more driving engagement for sure. But paddle shifters are just fun. Okay, not as fun as a manual, but paddle shifters are fun, especially with how quick this thing shifts. That's so great. Oh, and I should probably clarify, my appreciation for this transmission is primarily referring to when you're shifting it manually with the paddle shifters or the gear selector. Leave the shifting up to the transmission and it never seems to quite do what I want it to do. This road has a lot of tight turns and sometimes the shifts feel a bit jerky, and oftentimes it doesn't seem to be in the gear that I would think it should be in. I think the thing is that the transmission can't anticipate the curves in the road, but you can. So that way you can anticipate what gear you should be in when you come up to a certain turn. So for me, treat it like a manual, shift it yourself, and you'll be incredibly happy with this automatic transmission. All right, the road is opening up a bit. These long sweepers, this is where this car really shines. This car just kills those high-speed corners. Man, this car is so much fun. Oh, one more thing I have to do. This is a Camaro after all. Okay, let's talk price. As tested, this thing is over $63,000. That's a lot of money. But keep in mind, manufacturers generally like to fully option out review cars. Ditch the nearly $6,000 carbon fiber wing, the $2,000 ground effects, and a bunch of the other aesthetic add-ons, and you're back down to a much more reasonable price. The 2SS with the manual transmission and no additional options comes in at $42,000. But I do think that these 6-piston brakes, the sway bar, the strut tower brace, and the suspension lowering kit are a worthy upgrade if you're likely to be bombing down canyon roads. When this car showed up in my driveway earlier this week, I was obviously excited, but in all honesty, I didn't expect to like it. I tend to favor smaller, lighter cars with fewer horses under the hood, and I tend to prefer vehicles that slay winding canyon roads with ease and don't usually get too excited about pure straight line performance. But could this large Camaro with a brute of a V8 possibly be good at both? Turns out the answer is yes. Sure, it would be even more so with the 1LE track package, but even this 2SS with a few performance options is a force to be reckoned with. Is it a muscle car? Of course, but is it a sports car that can put a huge smile on your face on a canyon road? The answer is definitely yes. After a week behind the seat of this Camaro SS, I was quickly lured in with the intoxicating roars of the 455 horsepower V8. But then I was subsequently drawn in with the incredibly precise steering. And that 10-speed automatic is damn fantastic. Yes, the interior is a bit cramped and some of the ergonomics are weird, but those minor annoyances are quickly forgotten once you step on that throttle. Are there faster cars out there? Of course. Are there better handling cars out there? Yes. But the package that Chevy put together with this Camaro SS is really hard to resist. Even with that ridiculous wing. So are you in the market for a Camaro? Which trim level would you opt for? And are you down with the way that this thing is spec'd out? Or are you thinking Mustang GT? Let me know in the comments below. Are there any other cars you'd like to see me review? Post up in the comments and let me know. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you're well, and I'll see you later.